lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name's Ryan.
And I'm Manny.
And we are here to talk about a book that a lot of people have been speculating on in terms of what it was. Void Rivals #1. People were talking about, first of all, it's Robert Kirkman's new book. And Lorenzo de Felici, I believe that's the same creative team on Oblivion Song, if I remember correctly.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, same artist, creative team. Obviously, it's Kirkman book. But so anyway, so this book has been talked about for a little bit. It was, when it was promoted in the beginning, it was going to be connected to an overall new shared universe. So
yeah,
I was hoping it would have something to do with Invincible because I'm a huge Invincible fan, but that's not what it was. And spoiler alert, if you have been staying off the internet and you haven't seen this yet, you don't want to know, turn off the video. Is connected to Transformers and G.I. Joe, which he just got the license for, and to be honest with you, I mean, if everyone was talking about probably Skybound was going to get it. I've known about it for a few weeks that he got the license. I guess at this point, it's okay to say, when we interviewed Daniel Warren Johnson, he also told us he was working on a property within this, which, we'll talk about that. It's at the end of the book where they announce some of the books, but Void Rivals is created by Kirkman, but like Manny and I were saying before we started recording, it's trademarked and copyrighted for Hasbro. So this new franchise, this new, IP, Kirkman created it, but Hasbro owns it, which is kind of interesting. I don't know how that works. Like, I'm assuming that's probably how he kind of, when he came to them and his sales pitch to them was like, listen, I want Transformers and G.I. Joe.
The proverbial offer you can't refuse. You know what I mean?
I will create something that's connected to both of those franchises, but you own it. That's what I'm assuming he said. Now,
we don't know. Maybe they came at him with a rough idea, but like, to me, that seems less likely. I think you're probably right, because as we were saying before we recorded, and I was going to start saying, Kirkman's a real savvy businessman. I mean, think about his career trajectory. He started off as a creator-owned dude, and now he's like an executive at Image,
Yeah.
What's his title? Is it Chief Creative Officer, or?
I think he's COO. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think he is. It would make sense.
They rotate positions too.
But the point is that he has a lot to do with the business side of Image Comics now. He's not only just writing and making his own Skybound books through his imprint, he's also an executive at the entire company. So he's going to be privy to all these deals that they're making with other companies. So
he's also one of the largest pieces of the pie in terms of what Image does, I would imagine. Like, I could be wrong. Like, I don't know what Image Central, like how much of that, but I would imagine Skybound, if you look at it as a whole, is a pretty big chunk of what Image Comics is making in terms of revenue, because, like, first of all, Walking Dead and Invincible alone, Invincible maybe wasn't that big of a deal maybe prior to the show, like in terms of reselling.
I mean, it was big with people like you and me that love comics,
right. But now it's like, I remember when that show came out, like, I was working at the shop at the time, and those trades were flying off the shelves. We could not keep them in stock. There was multiple people that would keep coming like every week or two and get another trade, and then they started getting 2 at a time because they were reading it so fast. And then obviously Walking Dead is a goddamn pop culture.
Walking Dead is one of those things, a paradigm shift in pop culture. You know what I mean? Like, it's like Star Wars. I mean, I don't think that's hyperbole. Like,
no. So it makes sense if you're Hasbro, and IDW did a great job with Transformers and G.I. Joe. They had the property for a long time. They did some great projects. I mean, they had the Tom Scioli G.I. Joe versus Transformers,
which is to me, that's a classic series.
Yeah, Michel Fife did his Sierra Muerte story.
Fantastic, also.
Exactly. So like they did some great stuff. But for whatever reason, Hasbro wanted to do something different. And
Hasbro's also been notorious. I mean, think about how many different publishers G.I. Joe and Transformers have gone through. They were at Marvel at one point. Then they went to Devil's Due for a while with Josh,
which was Image, which was exactly also, so it's like, it's kind of coming back to Image. And it's interesting because, like, there's other Hasbro properties that like, I think ROM is Hasbro, isn't it?
It is Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, so there's some other stuff, right? But like, it's weird that
My Little Pony.
It's weird that like Marvel's starting to reprint some of that stuff, but then Kirkman has this. Everybody was speculating that Marvel was getting them back. And I thought it was hilarious because I already knew, and like I didn't want to say like, hey, I already know where it's going. But anyway, so like we'll talk about Void Rivals. It's hard not to kind of like get excited because like Kirkman taking these franchises on. If you read his comic books, you know, first of all, you know he loves comics. You know he's not going to do something unless he thinks he can do it great. And you know, we get introduced to these two opposing races, which my buddy was like kind of comparing it a little bit to Saga. You know, like
you know what?
like
I could see that now you mention it. Yeah,
like not the story, but like
just
the bare bones of it, of like where it's like these two opposing races that have been at war with each other come together. You know, kind of like almost fall in love.
Yeah, like the circumstances are a little different, you know, but I can see the comparison.
Yeah. So like,
yeah, you're right. It's these two people stranded on a planetoid, and you know, they were
love this opening page.
Yeah, the art is amazing in this, man. There's a really like a sort of Euro comics like Mobius kind of look to this, which I really love. But yeah, they're stuck on this planetoid, and they basically, after going back and forth for a while, figure out like, hey, if we're gonna get out of this, we need to work together because they can probably put the pieces of their two ships together to get out, you know?
Yeah. And I love how they say, like, you know, we're not supposed to be talking to each other. We could get killed for this if they found out, kind of. And then his like the guy,
the handroid. It's called the handroid. He's got the
it's like telling him like what the like kind of like what are you doing? You know, kind of like in his ear. And she's like, oh my God, I've heard it. So like I should be dead now, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like this back and forth banter. Like nothing really crazy happens in this issue. But that's not to say it's not a good comic. But it is really mostly just them talking back and forth.
But through that talking, I feel like he does really well with the dialogue here because, I mean, there's a ton of exposition being done to set up what's going on. But the idea of having them on the planet together and discussing it is a clever way to get that information across without it being really like kind of boring. I mean, you're right. Not a lot is happening. This is all like setting up the chess pieces here, but the art's great, the dialogue's great, and I really do think that he creates personalities for these two characters. Even though, like you said before we recorded, that like they're by virtue of what they're wearing, you can't really see their faces. I mean, I thought the one guy was a robot at first, you know, but then you realize that they're just wearing suits.
I realized it once the word balloons weren't robotic with the lettering. That's when I noticed that. But
especially since he's got the handroid and the handroid and that style. He's got like a glove basically that's like an AI glove that works almost like our iPhone, I would say, you know, in this world, like where it knows things, it does things, can analyze things, and that the word balloons that come out of that are robotic. So yeah, that's a detail I missed. Good point.
And it's funny. I feel like if I was more of a Transformers head, which I'll be honest with you, I've never really been into Transformers that much. You know, I've probably seen episodes. I've seen Beast Wars and stuff when I was a kid, and I saw the movies, right? But I've never been super into them. I read some of the stuff from like Dreamwave in the mid 2000s when Pat Lee had it, but like, I feel like I would have noticed that was a Transformer, you know, because like they make a point to show Jetfire right there, right? Like
the ship. I mean, I knew it was based on the color scheme, and you know, I'm a little older than you, so Transformers dropped at like the fucking sweet time for me. You know what I mean? Like I was the right age, and I was obsessed with Transformers for about 3 or 4 years as a kid, probably about, you know, like most kids my age. And Jetfire was one of my favorites, specifically because Jetfire is actually a repaint of a Robotech figure, but that's like a whole other thing to talk about because Transformers was really sort of pulled from a couple of Japanese toy lines and IPs. But you're right. I mean, I think the idea was that if you're a Transformers fan, based on the way that the ship looks and the color scheme, you're supposed to be like, shit, is that Jetfire?
Yeah, but I like the in the bottom corner because like they're like, wait, what is? And you hear the, you know, like you can hear like the fucking like Transformer sound.
Yeah,
and then you flip and like that was a great reveal. And
it was, and the scale of Jetfire is great when they draw him because, you know, Transformers are huge, and the Jetfire the Jetfire toy itself was like a premium like Transformer. That fucker was like that big. Like,
Oh, was
metal.
it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was like one of the ones that you only got on Christmas. You know, like you weren't gonna get it during a trip to Kmart, like a regular trip. But yeah, it's a great reveal, man, and it feels as I mean, I was a little worried about how forced this would feel, but I could see it fitting naturally in what he's trying to write here. You know, like I mean, we don't even know when or where we are, and the when is important because of something Jetfire says here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because he's like he notices significant microscopic fungal growth in an atmosphere almost devoid of moisture. And is that wind erosion? But that would mean I've been stranded here for millions of, and then he stops and he's like, Cybertron. After all these years, he's like, I'm sorry, I have to go home. And then he just flies off. So that's the extent of seeing the Transformer in the book. Then we get back to they don't even have names in here, do they? Derek or Dirac.
Yes.
Is the guy, I can't remember the girl's name.
No, they named their races. She's a Zerontonian.
He's a Gorian, she's a Zeratorian, yeah.
Zerontonian, yeah.
And but anyway, so like I think the crazy part too is like you have these opposing races, right? And to me, the reveal of them, looking at each other and they look the same.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cool because it's like, to me, I correlate that with like how we'll fight each other over religion or race and how stupid it is because we're all human beings, So like that's kind of the vibe I got in terms of this. And that's Kirkman really like what I don't know. I think that's what he does. He like really like knows how to do the human condition, and really put that into his books, whether it's The Walking Dead and it's about zombies, but really it's about people. And
right.
Invincible.
Where Invincible is a epic superhero story, but all it really is a coming of age and from like teenage years to adulthood and fatherhood of one character. You know what I mean? And what he deals with. So you're right. He is very great at writing these epic stories, but grounding them in a very human main character that puts you in the place. And I think if that's what he's gonna do with the Transformers property, is probably smart.
Yeah. Oh, okay. They did mention her name though. It's Solila. That's what it was.
Okay, yeah.
I couldn't remember. I was too busy looking at the art.
The same. The only difference is the shape of the diamond that's on their forehead and the hair color. But I mean, that could be just as easily as like the different like skin tones we have as humans. You know what I mean? Like it's nothing. It's just not even a genetic difference. It reminds me a lot of an old Star Trek episode where the crew of the Enterprise meets an alien race that they're half black, half white, but some of them are white on the right and some of them are white on the left, and they hate the two different ones hate each other. It's like you said earlier, such a nice image to be like, we can't even get along with each other. You know what I mean? Like it's great. And I love the drawing here at the end of him. Like it's the expression is really good. I mean, there's almost like a Daniel Klaus like vibe to that drawing for some reason.
I agree, yeah.
Like just something in the face really, really captures like the shock. Basically what's happened here is that these two characters, everything they believe in has just been shattered.
Yeah.
Like
everything they've been told their whole life,
has been shattered. It's a lie. Like, wait a minute, we're the same? You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck's going on? And that's a great moment to end the comic on, honestly. Like, because like you said, not a lot happens until this last page where you're like, fuck, that's a good hook. And there's how you said it's similar to Saga, but there's where it's different because like they're not, as far as we know, they're not a different race,
Right. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. And it's interesting to see how it's going to be connected because this definitely feels like it's in the future.
Yes.
But I don't think you can do G.I. Joe in the future. I think that'd be kind of weird.
No.
So is this going to be set in the future of this connected universe? Like that's kind of what my thought was after I was done reading it. Because like we do have the announcement in the back of the Transformers book by Daniel Warren Johnson. We have Duke and Cobra Commander, both written by Joshua Williamson, which I'm very stoked about.
And Duke by Tom Riley, dude. I fucking love Tom Riley's art, and the fact that he's drawing that is exciting. Like I love he did a Thing miniseries a few years ago on the Ant-Man series. That was
and Andrea Milana, I'm not familiar with on Cobra Commander. And at first, like when I saw, because I know you have the poster that retailers gave out, so on the bottom it said that it didn't say the creative teams. but it just said when the books were going to drop. And I was like, you're not doing a G.I. Joe book? Like, that to me was just weird. I'm like, I'm not upset. I'm like, I'm gonna check these both out, which I've never.
Yeah.
I haven't bought G.I. Joe books since the early 2000s. Or this, I bought the Snake Eyes book by Liefeld. But
yeah,
other than
and
that,
of course the Fife, the Michelle
Fife,
you know, yeah.
But other than that, like, I have not bought Transformers or G.I. Joe stuff since the mid 2000s. Besides those, and I have not been able to find the G.I. Joe Transformers book by Shillian. It's out of print. It's a lot of money.
I find I think I found like one issue in a dollar bin, and I have that. But you're right, it's out of print. I mean, I think that it digitally you can maybe find it, but as far as like a hard copy, good fucking luck, you know?
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm gonna check all these books out, obviously, because I have faith in Kirkman and I love the creative teams. If nothing else, I mean, I like Tom Riley. I'm not familiar with Andre Milano, but Joshua Williamson will get me to buy a book, and of course, Daniel Warren Johnson is gonna make me want to buy a book.
Writing,
no matter what he draws.
And that's actually a good choice for him, like the Transformers, because he's really good at drawing like ships and tech and like all this stuff, you know. So I'm really excited about that. Like, I haven't been excited about a Transformers comic since I was probably a kid, to be honest with you. I mean, Scioli series aside, because I mean that was great. But I mean, maybe this is going to be a return to form, like, you know, and make the property like really viable again.
No, I think these are probably going to be some of the best selling books,
Yeah.
at least in the beginning. I don't know how sustainable it will be, but it's going to bring in new readers that otherwise, like myself, that weren't reading the books, maybe at IDW. I know that Larry Hama was writing the Real American Hero book at IDW, and he also posted on social media that he just, like, I don't remember when he posted, but he finished the script for issue blah blah blah, whatever, issue 304 or whatever it was. So that means he's got to be doing it with Kirkman, because where else is this G.I. Joe book coming? Like, that issue hasn't, you know. So I'd imagine maybe they're going to continue that series, I guess.
Yeah. Didn't the IDW series continue the Marvel numbering?
It did. But I'm
maybe
saying,
they're gonna,
no, that's not what I'm saying. Like, obviously, like they'd continue the numbering, but is it going to be its own thing, like not in the Energon universe, like, which is what this is called? That's kind of what I think, because I feel like Kirkman wants to do his thing, but he also wants to like respect the fans and the legacy of the title, so he doesn't want to like alienate those, which is smart.
You know, give G.I. Joe heads like their classic comic that they've been loving for like fucking decades now, and then do something exciting. I mean, yeah, it's comics. You can do all this. You can have all this in the sandbox, man. Nobody says that you can't.
Yeah, so but I'm excited. I'm definitely excited to see what comes from this. It's interesting, like, again, that Hasbro owns Void Rivals, so this is a Kirkman. It's not. I hate to say, it's like not creator owned. It's not a creator owned book. It's a fucking Hasbro owned book, but Kirkman created it. So it's kind of odd. I've never seen this before. You see the comic book. I mean, it used to be in the 80s where you'd see the toy line start and then the cartoon would come after. You know, like, but now it's a comic book starting and now we're going to see a fucking toy line. So it's interesting. It's interesting to, I mean, like I said, I don't know that they're making a toy line, but I don't, why would Hasbro want to just own a comic book property? Like, they're not in the business of comic books, they're in the business of toys. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from this. I'm excited. It was a great, you know, it's a good first issue. Definitely like makes you want to read more. And I'm interested to see how this will be connected to the overall, you know, Energon universe. Because again, it's obviously set in the future. I don't know. It's interesting. I want to know how it's connected.
Yeah, and it's a cool way to like, instead of just dropping the new Transformers title, like it does, you know, sort of create something new. And one thing I wonder is, maybe he did mention it. Did he come up with this idea specifically to unite all this, or was this just like an afterthought he had? I mean,
I think he just created it. Yeah, he doesn't really mention like why he did the book. You know?
Yeah, he mentions his love for Transformers, but not So maybe it's just an idea he had, and he was like, "Fuck," you know what I mean? Like, this could fit in here real easily, you know?
Yeah, he
like,
just said he's, you know, to be here now with Lorenzo to create a corner of the new universe featuring these characters is a real thrill for me. I'm excited to see Zertonians and Argonians being mentioned alongside Cybertronians and quintessence, you know. So it's, yeah, he doesn't really mention like how this series really came about, you know, like why is he excited about these characters being integrated with them, or is he just excited to add to a lore where they're interact, like something he created is interacting with stuff that he grew up loving. That's kind of more what I'm thinking. He created this book with the intention of it being you know, connected to them.
Connected, yeah.
You know, like I don't think this was an idea he had and then was like, okay, well, I'll just use it for this. You know, like he definitely.
You're probably right, because it does seem, and he keeps saying in the outro like how seamless everything is gonna connect. You know, like he's like, I know it may seem kind of like nuts right now, but he's like, you know, trust me, it's all the pieces are gonna fit like a fucking puzzle. And hey, I trust Kirkman, man. I mean, you know, he's someone that obviously always has had like a very like, you know, like he's got the long con in mind. You know, he's always got like a big game plan, and I think he's always had everything sort of planned out in advance. That's why he's able to sort of tell these really long epic stories that have this, like you said earlier, humanistic side to them. So I think we're gonna be in for a treat, and I don't feel like this is some kind of like cash grab at all to have like the IP. I think this is coming from a place of a fan, and from, you know, like a place filled with heart for the Transformers and GI Joe. So I'm excited. I'm gonna add Void Rivals to my pull list, and I'm definitely gonna check out all the Joe and Transformer titles as they start to drop. I think Transformers drops in October.
Yeah, so it's right at the end of the year, and then the beginning of 2024 is when the second of 2 GI Joe books drop. So yeah, I'll be picking all those up too. I mean, Void Rivals was already on the pull. So if you haven't picked this up yet, which it's only when this video drops, it'll only be out for a day, but make sure you go pick up the book. You're not gonna be disappointed.
Yeah.
And make sure you hit the subscribe button and follow us on social media. The links are down below. And on that note, we're out.
We'll see you next time, guys.